Oh, yes. Welcome in to another episode of Five Rounds here on the Five Reasons Sports Network. I feel so bad we didn't have an episode last week. It's my fault. I had to bail. I went on a family trip. And guys, oh, my God, that family trip. My son ended up having a great time, but it traveled me, my wife, my 3-year-old son, Luca, and my parents also came with us. And then my wife was already sick, as I told you guys last week in the build up to it. But she didn't want to cancel the trip. She wanted to try and tough it out. And then we arrive in Central Florida, and immediately she felt 100 times worse. She goes to urgent care. And then the next morning, my mom was feeling terrible. She went to the emergency room. Both okay. They were both fine, and not even, they got COVID tested. Nobody had COVID. Nobody had any sort of serious issues. It all ended up working out for the best.
It's just that reaction that older adults get to Disney World.
I guess so. Right?
The only cure is to leave Disney World.
So thankfully, everybody ended up okay. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. Before we dive headfirst into all of it, I want to remind you guys that this show is served by the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. Oh, my God. The Quarterdeck, you guys should know this by now. This is your spot to watch every UFC pay-per-view fight with zero cover charge. You pay nothing at the door. They're not going to charge you a cover. They've got TVs covering every wall, big screens, high definition. Oh, my God. It is such a great place to watch the UFC pay-per-view fights. They've got 2-for-1 happy hour all day, every day. Sometimes I lose count of the 2-for-1 margaritas that I consume at the Quarterdeck because you start piling on those 2-for-1s. I only have so many fingers to count them on. The drink specials are awesome. Guys, the Quarterdeck is such a great place to watch all the football games, college football Saturday, NFL on Sunday. And especially if you're a Canes and Dolphins fan, you want as much alcohol as possible to watch those teams play. So make sure you take advantage of the 5 for $15 ice cold buckets of beer. 5 for $15 ice cold Heineken Light, Amstel Light, High Noon Hard Seltzer. Mix and match those to your heart's content. And the food is delicious. Don't even get me started. Oh, man. When I think about that seafood at the Quarterdeck, I love to build my own poke bowl, and the sushi is awesome at the Quarterdeck. The fresh fish is so good. I love that mahi-mahi there. Guys, if you're not a seafood fan, don't worry. They've got some of the best burgers I've ever had. I was at the Quarterdeck last time I saw Frank out there about a month ago. I had the All-American burger. It's so good with the melted cheese. The burger was perfectly cooked to my specifications, and that secret sauce on top is so delicious, man. The sandwiches are great. The baby back ribs are awesome. Make sure you check out the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill, and you have an opportunity. We're going to have a 5 Reasons Sports meet and greet and watch party Monday night, November 8th. It's going to be at the Plantation location. I love that. It rhymes. The Plantation location out near the BB&T Center where the Panthers play. Great location. It's gigantic. A lot of room. A lot of good times will be had by all. So we're going to be out there watching the Miami Heat on the road that night at the Denver Nuggets, and also Monday Night Football that night. So you're going to meet all the great personalities from 5 Reasons Sports. Even me, I'll be out there. Ethan Skolnick will be out there. Frank and James, the entire crew. You get to meet us out there. Make sure you mark it on your calendars. Monday night, November 8th, we will be having a watch party at the Quarterdeck Sawgrass, the Quarterdeck Plantation location. So that is going to be fantastic. If you want to check out the Quarterdeck's menu before you go, I like to pick out what I want to eat before I get there. Then I change my mind 5 or 6 times. But I like to peep the menu. Also, if you want to find the location nearest to you, visit them on the web at quarterdeckrestaurants.com. The Quarterdeck, come for the food, stay for the fun. And we are going to be giving away tonight, this has been burning a hole in my pocket, the $20 Quarterdeck gift card. I always like to show you the magnetic strip so you know it's legit. We're going to be giving away at some point this evening a $20 gift card, which you can use at any Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill location. And also, if you want to pay that forward, I know we're still in October, but you want to give a Christmas gift to somebody, you win the gift card and you say, I'm going to pass this along. I'm going to give this, to my mom. I'm going to give it to my brother-in-law. It makes a nice stocking stuffer, makes a nice gift. They can go out and take advantage of it at the Quarterdeck. I am Alex Donno. Alongside, as always, let me introduce first James Walker. James, I mentioned we didn't have a show last week. I missed both of you guys. It's been 2 weeks since we've had a show. It feels like a month, man. How have you been, James?
I've been great, but Alex, looks like we're going to see each other a lot more now. The PFL finals is next week.
I'm going to that. Yeah, you are as well.
Yep,
Frank, come to the PFL finals.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's my name? Skip? I mean, I didn't hear about that.
It's coming up. Be a good time.
Yeah, I'll get you access.
I'm not going to sit in the media section, though.
That's the problem. That's why, because we got to reconcile these differences.
Alex, my hypocrisy only goes so far. I can't sit in the media section.
And of course, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Frank Zaffere with us as well. Frank, what have you been up to these last couple of weeks, my friend?
Just trying to turn food into money. That's it. That's what I've been trying to do.
I love it. Well, I know what Conor McGregor has been up to over these last couple of weeks, allegedly, of course. Now, Conor and his family, they were on a nice trip in Italy, it's God's country. I mean, I love Italy, family from there on my father's side. It's amazing. He's in the Eternal City. He's over in Rome. And actually, one of the reasons why he went over there is kind of badass. He was having his child, I think it's his son, his youngest child. They were having him baptized at the Vatican. That's a boss move.
How much do you have to? How big's that check?
I have no idea.
Do
you think the Pope performed the ceremony?
I think it depends on how big the check is.
I mean, you would figure you would ensure the salvation of that child 100%. It's not like if he's at the heaven's gates and God is like, bro, I'm not sure, maybe purgatory for a little bit. But wait, hold on. I'm looking over your resume. You were baptized at the Come right in, sir. It's going to go something like that. So it wasn't just getting his child baptized in the Vatican. McGregor also had some extracurriculars. The man is mentally ill, I'm telling you. And of course, I will say alleged because, I wasn't there. I don't know if they have good surveillance footage of what really happened. But Conor McGregor has been accused by an Italian DJ, Francesco Facchinetti. I gotta ask my relatives if they've heard of this dude. Apparently, he's a big time DJ and musician over in Rome. And he definitely had facial injuries. Whether or not those were definitely caused by Conor McGregor, I'd say probably so, because we know he does that sort of thing. But he had cuts on his upper and lower lips. He claimed to have a broken nose. He said he was concussed. And so the alleged altercation took place at a luxury hotel in Rome after Facchinetti claims that he was part of a group that McGregor invited to a party that night. McGregor reportedly lashed out when the group wanted to leave the party, and that's when the DJ claims he was assaulted with punches to the nose and mouth. Facchinetti claims he suffered a concussion as a result of the alleged assault, and that's why he ultimately decided to press charges after talking to his wife and friends about the incident. And then I love these quotes. So this is what the DJ told CNN about Conor McGregor. He is dangerous. He needs to be stopped. That's what he said. So McGregor finds himself in a little bit of hot water. Now, I'm sure he's done with his many other incidents along the way, his expensive lawyers will probably find a way to settle with this guy and make these charges go away. But it's at this point, and I know, Frank, all of this is alleged, but at the same time, that seems like a very Conor McGregor thing to do. You're out in Italy at a party, you get into a bar fight. That's his MO, right?
It 100% is, but I think where he's taking it to another level is he is in Rome to be at the Vatican for his child's baptism and still found time to go to a club and beat up a DJ. I think he's transcended his normal kind of, irreverent and otherwise criminal behavior and really taken it to a level that may result in some kind of, post-life, heaven or hell decisions when he gets to the pearly gates, because I just don't understand how you can be there for something that special and then just squeeze in a bar fight in a club in Italy with a DJ who clearly is not capable of fighting him. I'm confused. What I really want to understand, and I wonder if people receive this information about Conor and then think the way I do, he's a payday walking around anywhere he is because he's liable to hit anybody. So I wonder if people are just kind of, and I wonder if this DJ was one of them where you just say something to him on the off chance that, hey, a broken nose and a big check sounds good to me. I mean,
now I've never had my nose broken before. I
not
don't
that
know
bad.
I don't know if you have, James, and Frank says it's
No.
not that bad. Like, with that, like, if you were at the same social gathering with Conor McGregor, would you think, I'm maybe a little bit, not saying you are, but hypothetically, someone, I'm a little bit behind maybe on my bills this month. I'm in the same setting with Conor. Let me see if I can provoke a nice check out of him, because when you go after a famous person like that, chances are, even if your case may not be strong enough to win in court, he's probably going to slide you something just to make it go away quietly.
Yeah, not my style. I'm not. If Conor has friends like that, he doesn't really need enemies. Guys waiting for him to punch him in the
True.
face that are hanging out with him. But I mean, Frank, look, you predicted this months ago, really after the Dustin Poirier fight, if I remember correctly. You said things are about to really spiral and go downhill for Conor McGregor in terms of he's losing in the UFC. It seems like his career is kind of coming off the rails, and now it seems like his personal life is really coming off the rails. And I used to think with Conor, okay, he went from nothing financially to a ton, like really fast, kind of a meteoric rise in a matter of about 5 years or so. And I used to think that, okay, when that happens and you become super famous, super rich really fast, you can be a target. There could be people, and you're a fighter on top of that. There could be people that'll test you. Oh, you're not that tough or stuff like that. And so I used to think it was people testing him, because if you think about all the incidents he had an incident down here in South Florida. Remember, he snatched someone's cell phone and threw it on the ground and stuff like that. But at this point, where there's smoke, there's fire. And it seems like, pretty much everywhere he goes, whether it's an award show, whether it's down here in South Florida, whether it's in Italy, things like that, these things kind of happen. And at some point, he has to take accountability that this is on him. It's not everybody else's fault all the time. Even if half of these incidents were not his fault, that means the other half of it was, and that he really needs to have the right people in his corner. And where's his security? Why does he not walk around with security? Why can't security do these kind of things?
Supposedly, the DJ had his own security, but I don't know if Conor did or not.
Yeah, James, that's a great point. And Alex and I covered the phone incident in Miami when we had the radio show at QAM, and his security basically just provides him the ability to sucker punch people without retribution. I mean, that's essentially their purpose. But to your point about the spiral and my predictive ability, I appreciate you saying that. But I think the whole world knew, because following the second Dustin Poirier loss, his uncharacteristically bad behavior post-loss, which was a big break from the way he had normally conducted himself, I thought that gave us a glimpse that he was in fact spiraling. And now I think it's just all about provocation to try to keep himself in the news and try to make somebody want to fight him. It's a desperate attempt at relevance, and it's sad. And eventually he's going to hit the wrong person. And
I guess the good news would be that if he's out there dancing at nightclubs and sucker punching people, the broken leg's probably better. That could be the silver lining here, that he's
he
healing
heals
quickly.
unbelievably fast.
He heals very quickly, right?
Yeah.
Here's Dana White was asked for comment on the situation, and he this was Tuesday. He was asked about this, and he was aware of it. I mean, it's pretty much impossible for him not to be. 100 people probably told him about it and texted him about it. He said on Tuesday that he was aware of the allegations against McGregor, but he had not heard full details about the incident, so he couldn't offer a comment. He said, quote, I honestly don't even know enough about it to comment on it. Obviously, I've seen what you guys have seen more than me, actually, to be honest with you. I haven't talked to Conor, so I don't know what the truth is. I don't know exactly what happened, so to comment on it, I really can't. Well, if he wants to get the truth of it, I don't know if Conor would necessarily be the best source for the truth, but yeah, he should talk to Conor. He should probably talk to whoever owns that nightclub at that hotel, anybody who saw anything there, maybe talk to the DJ. You should probably gather all of his information here, because Conor is probably not the most reliable narrator here.
Alex, what does Dana have to talk to anybody about? Conor McGregor's very wealthy. He has a very adept and professional security team. If the man wants to stay out of trouble, it's very easy for him to stay out of trouble. In fact, it would be easier for him to stay out of trouble than it would the three of us.
That's fair.
I mean, the fact that an incident happened indicates his behavior is, contradictory to, the benefit of the UFC brand, in my opinion, right now. I mean, he's not promoting a fight. He's just conducting himself, irresponsibly and criminally, and giving the entire sport a bad name. This is how all these guys are. They're all just morons that run around and sucker punch people that aren't equipped to fight back.
Yeah.
I actually think Dana is actually in a good position of power in this situation compared to, say, a Roger Goodell or Adam Silver or something like that. Commissioners of these other leagues, because when a fighter gets in trouble, they can kind of play that whole independent contractor card, and the fighter's way over here, in Italy doing his thing. He doesn't have a fight schedule. He doesn't have anything to promote. He doesn't even have a bout set up. He's not in training camp. He's out doing his own thing. He's his own independent contractor. When stuff happens in the NFL, it seems to be grouped under the Shield. When stuff happens in the NBA, it seems to be grouped under the NBA. So Dana can say, okay, look, John Jones is out doing his thing. Conor McGregor is out doing their thing. We don't have to schedule them another fight for another year and a half if we want to. Where other leagues have to kind of handle it a little more in-house, and they get a lot of bad PR from it. I think this actually helps. I mean, not helps Dana White, but in terms of him being able to kind of keep at arm's length, he can just say, look, I don't know what Conor's doing. He's way out there doing his own thing. When it's time to fight, I'll give him a call.
Well, let me ask both of you guys. James, I'll start with you, and then Frank, go ahead and weigh in. Yes or no? I mean, you can give me more than a yes or no, or you can give me an explanation, but do you think yes or no that this will affect Conor McGregor's ability or Dana White's willingness to give him another fight as soon as he's healed? Like, is this going to affect his career at all?
No, I personally don't think so. There's been worse alleged, with Conor, that he has been able to either just kind of have it go away or, whatever, pay the fine or restitution, whatever the situation called for. I think this is just kind of another blip. I don't think it's the straw that breaks the camel's back at all. And plus, Conor probably has 2 or 3 more big paydays left in him. Even if he wins or loses, I think there's still a want to see him back in the octagon at least 1 or 2 more times. So I don't think that's the case.
I could not agree more. And I don't want to, discuss my whole John Jones theory, but Conor McGregor basically kind of going in on that, bad guy thing that he's got. I mean, now everyone's going to want to see him get his ass kicked again. And so I think that makes him marketable as well. I mean, it was a time when he was celebrated, when the whole world wanted to see him win. And it seemed like his fandom was at a level we'd never seen for any fighter in the UFC. And I think he's really gone the other way now. I think a lot more people are rooting for Dustin Poirier than they were Conor McGregor, certainly in the second fight. And I think when he returns, it would be, aside from a contingent of Irish fans that fly in on the red eye to see it, I think most people are going to be hoping to see him lose again.
And I agree with you guys. I don't think that this incident or any of the previous ones, because they clearly haven't, because he's come back and fought after a number of different things that have gone on. The bar fight in Dublin, the handcart incident stateside. He's always come back and fought from that. So I don't think that this impacts this whatsoever. If anything, a lot of this, and I hate to say it because I know that people in society don't like the idea of bad behavior being rewarded, but in the fight game, it kind of is. And I'm sure that there are limits on that. I mean, if you go out there and kill somebody, that's a whole different story. But something like this, I mean, getting into social altercations, that might even improve somebody's brand. And like you said, Frank, maybe more people will hate him than love him at this point, but they're still more interested in watching him.
But Alex, I like what you just said there. Like, if he were to kill someone, right? Well, it's not that hard for something like that to happen. You turn around and sucker punch somebody who's not a professional fighter, and they fall badly and clip their head on the edge of the bar or whatever. Really bad things can happen. And I just feel like Conor McGregor is in what we've seen so many athletes be in over the years, bad behaving athletes and actors and other celebrities, where they just think a check makes everything go away. So really, I'm not accountable for anything as long as I can write you a check. But at some point, you do something that crosses that line, and Mike Tyson, you end up in prison, and or worse, somebody ends up hurting him very, very badly. So I just think that if there's anyone that cares about him in his inner circle, they need to corral his behavior, because it's only a matter of time before his action is the thing that actually does take away his ability to make money and or takes away his freedom.
Yep. And last point I want to make on this, it would be helpful. Shouldn't he be rehabbing, staying in one spot, rehabbing, spending time with his family? Every week I see him, he's talking to Sugar Sean O'Malley, one week he's at the Dallas Cowboy game. The next time he's in Italy, the next week he's meeting with the mayor of Miami, a different week. It's like he's just jet setting all over the world and things like that, when obviously, he can't seem to control his nightlife behavior at this point. So it would be good for him to just take 6 months off, relax, rehab that leg, get right. I'm sure he is training, but I mean, obviously, if he wasn't jet setting across the world, he could be training even more. And just get, just take a chill pill for a while. Like things aren't going too well for him jet setting around the world. And I'm the last person, by the way, to tell people to just, not live their life and just chill for a bit. But with him, obviously, I mean, it's like, he can't keep himself out of these situations. He can't keep himself out of these bad positions.
Well, I want to ask you guys. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm just going to reminisce. At one point, he was trying to leverage owning part of the UFC. Do you guys remember that?
I do remember
at the height of his stardom. And now he's beating up DJs, and he couldn't beat anyone in the top 10 in the lightweight division, the UFC. I want
to ask you guys one more question on Conor, then we'll move on to the toss-up. We got plenty of other things to talk about. We're going to be bringing on in about 20 minutes our friend Jonathan Ramlakan, lead MMA reporter for 5 Reasons Sports, is going to join us. Actually, I think he's the lead combat sports reporter. It's not even just MMA. The man is all over the place. Now, on Conor, and Frank, I'll start with you, and then James. Do you think he's always been this crazy and we just didn't realize it till he got more famous? Or do you think that he's gotten more crazy over time due to either just having so much money and fame it gets to his head? Or maybe one of my theories is sometimes I think certain personalities, and I kind of lump in Colby Covington for different reasons into this, they have a hard time kind of turning off their gimmick. Like they start living their gimmick. Like a good example of this is Andrew Dice Clay. Andrew Dice Clay has been living his wacky gimmick since the 80s. And before he was Dice, he's just some, fledgling comedian named Andrew Silverstein, who then created a character called the Dice Man and became the Dice Man and hasn't turned it off for like 35, 40 years. Do you think Conor just has trouble turning off his gimmick? Because I think Colby Covington suffers from that a little bit as well. Or why do you think, Frank, he's always been crazy and we're just kind of learning about it in recent years? Or has some kind of a switch flipped for him?
I'm trying to stay on I loved your theme for the show, When in Rome. So I'm going to try to do a little Latin, right? So there was In Vino Veritas. I can't remember. It's a long time since I've taken Latin, but I think money was pecunia or pecunium. So it's like in pecunia veritas. Like I think like he's always been that guy. The money took off the shackles. The money allowed him not to have the reservations or apprehensions about being himself. I don't think you suddenly transform into a douchebag. I think he was a douche, but there was some restraint because he was trying to get somewhere, and now he's got douche money. So now it's just like, you got to deal with me. I'm a douche, tough shit. I'm going to be who I am, and I think that's what we see going on here.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, look, what his first nickname was, and it's always been Notorious, right? I mean, he had that even when he was poor. That was his nickname, and Notorious Conor McGregor. Now it's Mystic Mac and Money Mac and all that kind of stuff. But his first and original, so he knew what he was. And, like as Frank mentioned, he had to have that discipline early to get to where he wanted to be in life. Now he doesn't need that discipline anymore. And so now things can come off the rail. But this is when it's more important than ever for him to be able to have that circle around him, especially people that maybe knew him before his riches, to kind of keep him in check. Some of it is human nature to not, to give into temptation and kind of do all this stuff, but he's going way past, what's acceptable in terms of, coming into money and just acting, amok, basically.
Yeah, James, you're right. I know if you and I gave Alex $100 million, he wouldn't walk into my restaurant and punch the DJ. So, I mean,
you're probably right about that. I would disappear to an island somewhere.
Buy an island.
Yeah, I probably would. Oh, man. Before we're going to move on to the toss-up in a second, I want to remind everybody who's watching us live, or even if you're watching us on replay later, do us a huge solid and smash the like button. Hit the thumbs up button. It really helps us out. The more likes, thumbs up we get, the more people's suggested videos we're going to turn up in. We can work the algorithm. Please do us a favor and smash that like button. And if you haven't already, you should have. But if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to 5 Reasons Sports on YouTube and turn the notifications on so you know when all of our great programming is live. But without further ado, I know Frankie Z has got an incredible list of questions for this week's toss-up.
I've been working hard on this list. I only came up with 3, so if you're ready, I'll go. For Conor McGregor, it seems like a weekly occurrence, but have you ever gotten into a bar fight?
Ooh. Now, you guys probably wouldn't be surprised that I'm going to say no. I don't have a violent past, but the closest that I ever came to getting into like an altercation was when I was like 19 years old, first year of college. At one point, I was dating a girl who was a crazy chick, like certifiably crazy. Like, you know, she would dance on tables at parties and stuff and get a lot of attention from dudes. And that's a recipe for, you know, so I'm at a party and she's all, you know, attention. She was like a female Conor McGregor, just craving attention all the time. And, you know, some, you know, really sketchy dude starts like hitting on her. And, you know, I'm just like intervening, like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? And then this guy, he had a cigar in his mouth and he attempted to put the cigar out on my face. So I'm like holding his arm, like it was like one of those movies in slow motion where somebody's like trying to stab you and like you're holding the knife back and like people ended up like intervening and he calmed down and I calmed down. So I did not have a cigar put out on my face, but that was the close. No punches were thrown. That was the closest I've ever gotten to. I've been in the vicinity of some bar fights where I did not intervene. I mean, at least not in like a violent way, maybe try to pull some people off, but I've never personally been involved. The cigar incident was the closest I have ever gotten to. What about you, James?
Wow, interesting story. So I've never been in a bar fight, but I do have a almost fight story. My last real fight was in 2nd grade, by the way. So that's
I think it was like third grade for me. I didn't count that. Yeah.
That was my last actual scuffle. But I nearly got into 2 fights in college. So I'll tell you the one story. I had an older roommate. So he was in ROTC, military training, big dude. He was over 21, so he had alcohol and everything in the room. And I'm this 17, 18-year-old freshman. And so one night he's drinking. I didn't drink. I'm not a big drinker at all, even to this day. And 2 football players, 2 Temple University football players are walking outside by our window. And so my drunk roommate, nothing better to do, decides to start yelling out the window, "Temple football sucks, you guys." Which they did. He wasn't lying, but why is he telling 2, D1 athletes, football players, on a Friday night or whatever that their football team stinks? So the guys obviously say, "Oh, okay, I can see where your room is. I see the light on and see where we're coming up there." So now I got about 45 seconds, and my roommate's probably 6'2", 200 pounds or something, and I'm like 5'11", 150, soaking wet at the time as a college freshman, and so I'm nervous. I got 2 Temple football players coming up, and he's like, "Look, we're gonna fight." So in my warped mind, I'm like, okay, how can I even the odds? I start plugging in an iron to get it hot. Because I'm thinking I got to do something, right? This is the only way I can really defend myself against 2 Division I athletes. And, he's going to be fine. He's military trained and all that kind of stuff. But I'm about to get my tail whipped. So I plug in the iron and I'm warming it up and I'm ready. So when they open the door, whack, I'm going to surprise them, with this hot iron. So,
oh, my God.
So all this stuff is coming up. They knock on the door. They're ready to go. Boom, boom, boom. I hear you talking all that mess, blah, blah. And I look at my roommate and I'm like, at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I got
the iron.
Exactly. He waves it off. He's like, "Don't say anything. Just stay quiet." And I'm like, okay, so cooler heads prevailed with him. Wow. I stay quiet. He stay quiet. They knock. They keep knocking. They're talking for about, it felt like 10 minutes, but really it's probably about 2 minutes. And then they eventually leave. And I end up seeing these, at least one of these football players, I end up seeing him like 2 or 3 weeks later. And I kind of explained the whole story to him. "Hey, I come in peace. Here's what happened. My roommate was drinking, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Don't worry about it. We were mad that night, but,
my God.
Nothing to to say. But imagine if they opened that door, or imagine if we opened that door. I mean, I don't know what would have happened. I could have got kicked out of school or something.
I was going to say, James, you hit somebody with a scalding hot iron. Your whole life may have changed.
Exactly.
I have this image in my head of like watching a Temple football game. Some dude takes off his helmet and he's got the imprint of an iron like on his forehead. Were you inspired? Like, and that's very like creative of you in like 45 seconds to come up with that. Yep. Were you inspired by Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone? Because I think in several of the traps he said he had the hot iron.
Wow, I don't know where I came up with that, man. I was just searching for something that just I was about to get whipped really by, he would have been fine. My roommate would have been fine. He would have defended himself, but I wasn't equipped. I wasn't equipped to defend myself for that.
Alex, if I ever get mad at James, remind me not to storm into whatever room he's in. I mean,
yeah, just like make sure it's a room where like an iron would not be. Like
Wow.
Man. Yep.
Well, you two guys make me feel like Conor McGregor. I mean, I feel like all I did was get into bar fights as a kid.
I knew Frank would have some stories.
I'm embarrassed to say some of them there may be still criminal action that could be pending. I mean, I don't know. Ooh. I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, I had my share, but also I've been in the bar business, don't forget. Yeah. So sometimes I've been on the other end of them where you're trying to break them up. And, it feels weird to say back in the 90s, but, back in the early 90s, you could kind of get away with almost anything. The whole world has changed now. Two things have changed. One, if you get in a bar fight and you hit somebody, you're definitely getting sued, right? Mm-hmm. That didn't used to be the case 20 years ago. And the second thing is the very sport we cover. You never know a bar you're in. I advise all my friends that still have that kind of thing about them where they're not afraid to engage somebody in a bar. The hell with what happens. I remind them that little guy over there might be a bantamweight fighter in the UFC, and you don't want that trouble. So hopefully they're listening to me.
Well, and then the other part of it is this day and age certainly wasn't the case in the early 90s. If a bar fight breaks out, there's at least a half dozen people who are pulling their phones out and filming it. So then there's video evidence. Like obviously, most people in the 90s didn't necessarily happen to have a camcorder on them when they're at the bar, right? So there wasn't a whole lot they could do to capture that. You just got to hope there's not a surveillance camera in there. But I knew Frank would have some experience where James and I would likely fail.
All right, next question. Did Aspen Ladd's coach, I really want to get into this. Did Aspen Ladd's coach, Jim West, cross the line with his harsh cornering between rounds? I mean, he really went off on her.
Honestly, I think the narrative that came out of this, I find it to be ridiculous the way people are complaining about this coach. This is the fight business, not the feelings business. And in case you guys missed this, there's some really good videos out there. BT Sport put a great one out on YouTube where they cut out so they only edit in between every round after the second, third, fourth round, so you can see the instruction that he gives to her. And he's got a certain, and this guy also happens to be her boyfriend, by the way, Jim West, her head coach. But yeah, he has a very direct, kind of harsh way to corner a fighter. He would repeatedly ask her, "What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing?" And would try to plead with her to throw more combinations. And it was a super boring fight. I just woke up from that fight this past Saturday. It was a coma-inducing fight. And he was right to say that Aspen was really not doing enough. And you could even argue that some of his cornering actually would have worked because he was really harsh after the third round, and she had a better fourth round, won the fourth round, won the fifth round, still lost the fight though. But my take on this, guys, and I don't know if I'm taking this a little bit too far, but I think this is a reasonable argument to make here. I think a lot of the people who have come out and referred to this man's cornering and his method to the way he spoke to his fighter, I've seen people use the word abusive, Misha Tate used that word. Now, she has a grudge, I think, against this coach because they've gotten into some spats before, so there's a history there. But she used the word abusive. And some people have agreed with that, and they've said he's crossed a line. I honestly think that a lot of the people who are up in arms about the way this man was cornering his fighter, whether they realize it or not, they're being sexist about this. Because honestly, if the same cornerman is giving the same advice to a male fighter, I don't think people would look at that and say he's being abusive or he's if this guy was cornering John Jones, I don't think anyone would have said, "Oh my God, how dare he speak to his fighter this way?" I think people are kind of treating the whole the women versus men thing differently here. And
Great point.
and listen, and Aspen Ladd, she looked a little bit upset in the corner, but she was also losing the fight. So, and she knew she wasn't performing well. So I don't know if like the sullen look on her face was the direct result of her coach, and he wasn't even yelling at her. And the other thing about this, and listen, like I'm not here to say this guy is the most amazing coach of all time, but I will defend him a little bit because and James, I'll let you weigh in next. It's not like he was just berating her. He was actually giving her advice. Like he was giving her instructions. Like if you have a cornerman that's just like, oh, you're doing terrible, you're sucking, you're not winning, and not giving you any sort of constructive criticism and advice, you could say that's bad cornering. But he was actually giving her sound technical advice, just doing it in a very abrasive way. What did you think, James?
Yeah, was it good coaching? No, it wasn't good coaching. You got to look at the result. The coach didn't get the result he wanted. Aspen Ladd fought the entire fight the same way. Was it offensive? No, I didn't find it offensive. I mean, the things that were said are things that, and Frank, you mentioned this too, back in the 90s, this is stuff that my high school football coach, would say to our team on,
I had heard worse than that from various coaches for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and times have just changed now to where it's a more sensitive time, and coaches aren't supposed to coach that way now. But look, when I played high school football, and we're young and impressionable, we're 15, 16-year-olds at the time. I mean, we had coaches that yelled and screamed at us, and all this kind of stuff. That was similar, and it's just a different time. So it's one of those things where maybe the coach kind of took an old school route, to trying to get things jump started. It didn't work, but so I think the coach needs to evaluate how to get a response, how to get the positive response for next time. But I didn't find it personally offensive in what he was trying to do. I mean, he had Aspen Ladd's best interest in mind to get the best out of her when obviously Aspen Ladd was not getting the best out of her abilities.
I didn't think of Alex's comment about maybe a sexist perspective on it. That's a really good point. But just jumping off what James was saying, I would say two things. First of all, Dean Thomas has told us many times how hard it is to get through to any fighter in between rounds in a situation that is that intense. Obviously, I mean, none of us have done any cage fighting, but I can only imagine how clouded your mind is and how difficult it is for you to receive information. And so I thought being direct and really confrontational was probably what he determined was the only way to try to break through and get out of her what he knew as her coach she was capable of doing. But this whole thing, and James, you're so right. I mean, this is just a great encapsulation of the dramatic softening of our culture. It's frightening to me as now an aging person to see it transforming in front of my very eyes. That, we have gotten to a place where, as James pointed out, playing football in high school, obviously before a few years before you guys, being yanked around by my face mask was a routine thing when I forgot something or didn't do something correctly. And guess what? It got my attention. I didn't forget it again. And I am no worse for the wear. But now suddenly, if a college football player, a college coach is seen doing that, they'll probably be forced to resign at this point. I mean, it's just, I don't know what's going to come of it, but nothing good. I mean, it's just an incredible wussification thing that's happening where you can't tell somebody who's in a cage fighting with virtually no rules.
Yeah.
You can't insult them in the corner. I mean, what the hell are we talking about?
That's a good point.
It's a cage fight, for God's sake.
And you bring up such a great point. And in this sense, let me expand on that point a little bit. It's funny how people who watch this sport, they draw the line at a coach, raising his voice. Like, I don't even know if he was raising his voice, just like, being very direct with his fighter. When you are willingly watching a sport where people get concussed and
Alex,
break limbs on the regular, but you draw the line at being at using a few F-bombs when you're cornering your fighter. It's weird.
Listen, you can break her orbital bone. You can make her bleed out over the mat, but don't you hurt her feelings. That's not acceptable. That can't happen. I mean, it's just so dumb. So, look, I mean, maybe the coach fighter matchup isn't right. Maybe they don't have the right chemistry. But I mean, look, I mean, if we're going to pretend like coaches don't hurt fighters' feelings routinely in gyms, then we're just deluding ourselves.
Yeah, but by the way, real quick before we move on to the next toss-up, have you guys heard anything about this? I say it ain't so. Alex M writes in, is Nate versus Luque happening? He says, I'm reading rumors that Vicente
Yeah.
Luque might back out. Don't be surprised if you start hearing about some injury. God, I would be so pissed. Have you heard anything about that, Frank?
I haven't heard anything about Luque backing out, but I mean, anything that involves someone with the last name Diaz in the UFC, there's going to be speculation that it won't happen until they're actually stepping into the octagon.
Yeah, I mean, the last that I read on it is that the fight is pending Diaz signing a new deal. That I hadn't heard anything about Luque backing out. I think if
Well,
anything,
Luque may not want to wait for that. I mean, that may be
oh,
part
okay,
of the issue. He might be saying,
yeah,
like, I'm not going to wait for you to negotiate for 6 months.
yeah. All right, so we'll move on to the next one.
Okay. Well, I only did 3, so it's the last one.
Last one, yeah.
Yeah, Fedor fights Timothy Johnson in Bellator this weekend. Does Fedor still move the needle for you? I already know what Alex is going to say, but I'm going to ask him anyway.
Yeah, he does, especially since if this is not his last fight, it's his second to last fight. I think that there's a little bit of confusion as to whether or not this one, which is in his native Russia, so you'd think this is maybe not a bad one to walk away from the sport with, unless he also does his next one, I guess, in Russia. But this is for Bellator this weekend. They're going to be in Russia. This Timothy Johnson fight might be Fedor's last. Now, he and his management have done a pretty good job in the last few years of handpicking opponents where he's fighting big names who are also so much on the decline that they're beatable. Like he's got recent wins over Rampage Jackson, Chael Sonnen, Frank Mir, but he is winning a lot of these fights. In fact, Fedor has been victorious in 8 of his past 10 fights. So, yeah, you could say he's handpicking opponents and fighting guys who are washed up, but theoretically, he's also washed up and he's still winning most of his fights. So, Fedor still moves the needle for me. I mean, he's still very fast for his age and for his size, hand speed wise, still has very fast hands. He still has power, and he's still like Fedor. He's never been like a conventional type boxer in the sense that you never know really where his punches are coming from, right? He can hit you from weird angles and throw opponents off. So, listen, yeah, I would argue, and I'm one of the biggest Fedor fans ever, as Frank hinted at. Really, it's been for probably over a decade. We've been watching, a version of Fedor that has been out of his prime, I would say, since around 2009 probably is when I think that he really crashed out of his prime, but he's still good enough out to go out there and win some fights. The Timothy Johnson matchup is going to be interesting because Timothy Johnson, not to say he's some athletic specimen, but he's a gigantic guy. I mean, Fedor usually goes around at around 235 pounds, and I think Timothy Johnson even maybe cuts a few pounds to get to 265. And he's got some size. He's kind of a lummox though, but he's got some size and some power. So this could be a dangerous fight for Fedor, but yeah, I'm actually more excited for Bellator than I am for the UFC coming up this weekend because Fedor, for me, still must-see TV.
Yeah, I'm on the other end of the spectrum, Alex, where and your point about 2009 was probably like the tail end of his prime is a good segue to that because for me, Fedor was an aura fighter. Like I watched him for his aura. That aura of invincibility, that aura of maybe seeing something in a heavyweight fight that you never saw before, as far as his cat quickness and his lightning hands and things like that. That aura has been shattered long ago. That aura has been gone for a decade. So I don't necessarily get much joy in seeing the shell of Fedor, like the shell of the fighter that he once was. I knew how great he was. I've seen fights of him in his prime. For me, he was an aura fighter. I kind of watched him for his aura. Kind of reminds me in terms of aura, stuff like Lyoto Machida or even Conor McGregor in his prime. They were aura fighters to where you kind of watched them for their aura, that they kind of had that mysteriousness about them, that invincibility about them. But once it gets shattered, I don't enjoy Lyoto Machida fights anymore. His aura has been shattered long ago. Same thing with Conor McGregor. He doesn't have that aura anymore. So I don't enjoy his fights as much. So same thing with Fedor, except it's been a long time, even longer stretch. Since I really enjoyed seeing him in the octagon or in the cage.
Kind of a frustrating thing about Fedor, is he the greatest heavyweight of all time? His career is kind of split right down the middle. Alex will correct me if I'm wrong in the numbers, but I think it was something like a 10-year run in Pride where he was undefeated and fighting the best fighters. And I think it could be argued that for much of Pride's existence, simultaneously UFC, they had most of the best fighters. And, that part of his chapter clearly defines him as the greatest heavyweight. And then there's part 2, where he avoided the UFC. And he did the Strikeforce thing, and now the Affliction thing, and or Affliction, I guess, first, and then Strikeforce, and then this and that part where it starts to seem like they're picking opponents for him, and when they weren't, he was losing the fights. And so, that part of it, I'm stuck on now, where I don't want to see it anymore. I feel like I'm seeing a scripted version of what was once a really tremendous fighter. And obviously that scripted part has gone on too long to save the aura that James was just talking about. But I would like to see the curtain close on this, and we could remember the Pride FC Fedor that the whole world was terrified of.
Yeah, I think for me, like when I knew that Fedor was entering the stage of his career when he had to start handpicking opponents, was when he lost to Dan Henderson in Strikeforce, because just in Henderson, like he was, he was on the back 9 of his prime, but I think a little bit closer to his prime than Fedor was at that point. But just based on like the perceived size difference, I didn't think Fedor had any business losing that fight to Dan Henderson. And when he did, I thought, okay, now, and like I said, even it's been like 10 years now since that fight, 10, 11 years. Like I still enjoy watching Fedor fight, but I have known for quite some time we're no longer seeing the same version. By the way, I want to give everybody who's watching us live now an opportunity to win this Quarterdeck gift card, $20 gift card to the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. And since I see my guy Brooklyn Rob in the chat, I'm going to make the code word in his honor. And you have a chance to win this, of course, Rob. Anybody else in the chat as well. So if the first person to type this word into the group chat will win this $20 Quarterdeck gift card. The word is mush, because Brooklyn Rob refers to me as the mush, M-U-S-H. First person to type M-U-S-H will win a $20 gift card to the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill, and a perfect opportunity to use it.
What does mush mean? What does mush mean?
It's like, I think it has origins in like a movie or something. I'm not sure, but mush, it's like a betting term. Oh, Brooklyn Rob won. How about that? So Brooklyn Rob, I'm gonna DM with you, sir. Get your information, and I will send you this gift card. So what it means, like I forget what the origin of it was, but what it means basically is somebody like me, who's like an avid sports bettor, and like everything that I bet on, the luck turns sideways, right? Like
I thought that was a cooler. So it's a mush. Okay.
I think that applies as well. Like, for example, I bet the Heat on the money line tonight, minus 125 against the Milwaukee Bucks. So if you're like Brooklyn Rob, you probably want to fade my pick. By me betting on the Miami Heat, it pretty much guarantees a Milwaukee Bucks victory. I can remember. I remember, Frank. You remember the fight card that we watched together live in Orlando?
Oh
and
my God.
Like you picked every fight wrong. Like you picked the entire main card. You didn't get a single one.
I went 0-13. I did the prelims wrong too. Yeah.
Like that was a mush moment, and I think you bet on a lot of those fights as well. That was not a good one for you. Let's
so you're
welcome
the
in.
mush. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Let's welcome in the lead combat sports reporter from the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Also does an awesome job on the post-fight shows. He's a part of our Miami Heat coverage as well, and I know he's got to run to that after he's done chatting with us. The great Jonathan Ramlakan at 3-Piece Combo on Twitter. Good evening, Jonathan. How you doing, sir? And I see you've always got the red and black background, but it's extra appropriate for the Heat opener tonight. How are you?
Absolutely.
Oh, and look at that.
Got the red and black shirt. I can't do Heat shirts on game day. That's my personal, little stipulation there. But I'm doing great, man. It's game day for the Miami Heat. We got a pretty good banger coming this weekend with Costa versus Vittori, given all the stipulations. But I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing so well.
Doing well. Doing great, man. Jonathan, I'll ask you the first question here. Named after your show, actually. Jorge Masvidal is back and has a matchup now against Leon Edwards. Highly anticipated, probably 2.5 years in the making or so. Just what's your initial thoughts, as we're probably going to be talking about this bout for the next 2 months?
Well, first of all, the whole backstage altercation is where my whole Twitter handle and my whole persona came from. The 3-Piece Combo came from the 3-Piece and the soda whole thing from Jorge Masvidal. So this matchup is kind of, pretty key to this whole thing for me as far as that goes. But I think it's going to be a really good matchup because Leon Edwards is one of these guys that's just really technical, right? Really good in the clinch, good at outpointing you. I know Donno's not going to like me for this, but he outclassed Nate Diaz for about 24 out of the
Out of here
25
with that
minutes.
nonsense. Diaz just ran out of time.
Right, he did run out of time. I'll give you that, right? If that fight went another 2-3 more minutes, Diaz would have won.
And blood.
But,
I think he was bleeding out.
But
Yeah.
he looked good in that fight, and he's looked good in almost every other fight that he's been in as well. And this is the shot that Leon has needed, or the name that Leon has needed to put himself over the top. I mean, Nate kind of would have done that, but he doesn't really have the ranking there. But as far as the matchup with him and Masvidal goes, I think this is going to be one of the better matchups of the year. Both of these guys are tough dudes. Both of these guys are strikers. I mean, none of these guys are really going to take you to the ground too much. You would not going to probably see that. I think it's going to be a great matchup.
Oh, and real quick, I want to get to a question from the chat, and maybe if Jonathan has anything to add to this, because we were just talking about Fedor fighting in Bellator in Russia this weekend. And he answered his own question, but I wanted to get to it as well. He asked, what testing does Bellator do? Like they don't have like the in-house program like the UFC does with USADA. Bellator just goes commission by commission with their testing, which, that used to be the acceptable standard. I mean, the UFC upped the ante, right? Because people were really putting the whole PED stuff under the microscope. So the UFC realized, just for the sake of our own PR, we want to look like we're running the cleanest possible. And I respect them for it, but they did it for PR reasons, I would think. So, for many decades, boxing promotions, the UFC for a long time, MMA promoters, you go commission by commission. Every state has a different standard, right? I mean, usually California and Nevada and New Jersey were some of the most rigid, because those athletic commissions tended to have the most money. So they would, they would have more testing, and like places like Florida and Texas were kind of the wild, wild west. But yeah, Bellator goes by the old model. They go commission by commission, which would mean, Jonathan, putting on a show in Russia. Theoretically, we'll see who takes advantage of it and who doesn't. I can't imagine there's a whole lot of PED testing going on because I don't know if Russia even has any sort of a sanctioning body for that.
Did you see Rocky IV? I mean, come on.
And I mean, to add on to that, you have a Fedor who's fighting at, I mean, what age is he? He's about 75, 76 years old at this point. He needs that
He's
extra
6
juice.
years younger than me, Jonathan. He's up on that.
I mean, listen, I love Fedor, so I would encourage him to take. And you know what? Honestly, to be fair with Fedor, I can't say this without a shadow of a doubt, but doesn't Fedor seem like the type of guy who might have even kept clean during the Pride era? Like, he's a deeply religious dude, and like he never looked like he was jacked. Like he always had a little bit of a muffin top and a spare tire. Like I never looked at Fedor like the same way I would look at like Paulo Kevin Costa. Randleman or something in Pride. Like, oh my God, that guy's juiced to the gills. Like Fedor might have actually kept his career clean for the most part here.
He might have. He's one of those guys, like you said. Look at somebody like Johnny Hendricks and the drop-off that he had when he came off the juice after USADA. Yeah. Look at the way that Overeem looked at when he came off the juice with USADA. So to your point, he never really had a point in his career when he went from, top physical condition to, like you said, muffin top. He's always kind of had that little extra chub. He's carried around that little extra weight, and that's always been there for him. Second part to what you said is that religious kind of style background, that deep, true martial artist where you don't want to cut corners, where you want to make sure everything is as pure as possible. It could be another thing there where we see that, and he just wants to prove himself, right? He's taking a matchup that's not a top of the line heavyweight matchup. It's kind of just more of the name. And I think with this fight, maybe the main event, you might not see some juicing, but if there's some undercard fighters that are coming out of Russia, I'm damn sure there might be some of those guys.
And they're loaded. They're loaded with Russians on this card. There's a bunch of dudes which is probably smart. I mean, you cater to the local market. Something I wanted to get into this with Jonathan and with everybody before Jonathan has to run in a little bit for Heat pregame coverage. Really interesting. And James Frank and I were chatting a little bit about this on our group chat. So this Paulo Costa Marvin Vettori fight. So Paulo Costa, he shows up, and a couple of days before the weigh-in, he reveals he's at 211. There's no way he can make 185. Like, he's contracted with Vettori for a 185-pound fight. He shows up, and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to make 185. So let's talk about a catch weight, 195. Or you know what? He even said, why don't we do it at 205 and put on a great show for the fans? And at the end of the day, as I suspected he would, Vettori, because he was within his rights, Vettori, to say, no, I'm not fighting if you can't make weight. Like, he's within his rights to do that. He's not forced to take the fight if his opponent can't make weight. Vettori did agree, and he gets 20% of Costa's fight purse. He agrees to do the 195-pound catch weight. And as James pointed out to me, the guy who may have recently started this trend is none other than Nicholas Diaz, right? Because Nick Diaz, before his fight with Robbie Lawler, shows up. He's like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to make weight. We better do it up a weight class, right? And so, like, do you worry about this becoming a trend, Jonathan? Do you see this and say, this is not good for business? We need to make sure everybody's making weight.
No, I don't see this happening a lot more in the future. I think this is two separate situations that are just happening at the same time. It's like, it's not, correlation doesn't mean causation. It's not the same thing. With the Nick Diaz thing, that's something where you have a legend of the sport coming in. You want him to fight no matter what, right? The Paulo Costa thing, I feel that's a little more irresponsibility. I think that's more on his end of just not really wanting to make 185, right? Coming after that fight off of Izzy, I felt like mentally he lost a lot of what he had going. He was going into that fight undefeated. He was cleaning house, knocking everybody out. And then he got put out. And then after that, it was kind of a little bit of insult to injury because of all the things Izzy did to him after the fight, the little dry hump, everything, right? And now mentally, he's not in a good place. Like, he's not really in a good place for this fight at all. And I think him coming in and not wanting to make weight is more of a mental thing for him rather than him trying to start some wave of stop cutting weight. Let's just make, fight like that. So that's how I feel about that.
Jonathan, do you think like the UFC should? I hate that if a guy, regardless of what the reason is, I hate that a guy like Costa can show up, miss weight badly, or say he's going to miss weight badly, and his opponent is really forced by code to take the fight regardless. And I hate that the opponent kind of has to take the fight. I wish the league would step in and say, look, you're unprofessional, irresponsible, and no, fight's over and we'll pay Vettori for his time. That would send a message, like no more of this nonsense. Because, I mean, Costa's getting an advantage. He doesn't have to cut weight. That's an advantage for a great big guy like that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think this needs to be an instance where, like you said, Vettori is kind of forced to take the matchup because if not, his whole training camp was for nothing. He might get show, but he's not going to get any win money.
And also knowing Dana White, he would try and like guilt him because I've seen Dana White do that before. Like Vettori didn't want to fight him, like stuff like that. It's like, bro, he would have fought him at the contracted weight, but I've seen Dana do that before.
Yeah, and
that's what I mean by code.
Yeah, like you said, it's a code. It's like that kind of unwritten rule in baseball. It's that same thing there where you got to kind of take the fight. You got to stay on the boss's good side. I mean, it kind of worked out for Corey Sandhagen, right? Because although he lost to Dillashaw, now he's fighting for the interim title. So, there's some benefits of staying on Dana White's good side. But as far as when a fighter misses weight and the opponent is kind of forced to take it, especially in like a main event spot, there needs to be a better situation for those opposing fighters on the other side of the weight cut because they're putting in the time to make the weight. They're straining their bodies. They're doing this little extra work. And now, like you said, Costa's going to have an advantage because he knew coming in he didn't have to cut to 185. He was like, it's a 195 or bust for me.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing I want to ask you quick before we let Jonathan run because he's going to be hosting Heat pregame tonight. Who do you like in that fight, Costa or Vettori? And of course, in a factor for that, you can include this whole weight thing. Who do you like in the fight?
You know what? I'm going to say Marvin Vettori gets it done. I really don't. I'm not a super big fan of Marvin Vettori. I'm an Izzy guy. I'll just sign you as my favorite fighter. So, I mean, Marvin's not going to be my favorite guy. But I think Marvin can get it done. He has a pretty big head. That head can take some punches. I think if he gets some takedowns and wear Paulo Costa out, I think that can be something that'll cause some issues as well. So, I'm going to say I'm going to pick the underdog here. I think Vettori gets it done by upset.
I love that. My northern Italian brother from another mother, Marvin Vettori, is going to get it done. Jonathan Ramlakan, thank you so much, man. Everybody, make sure you follow him on Twitter at 3-Piece Combo. It's your one-stop shop, whether you want to get combat sports news and opinions. Jonathan does that at a very high level, post-fight shows, and also tremendous NBA coverage as well. Jonathan, thank you so much, man, and enjoy the Heat game tonight.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. Have a great night, guys.
I love it. Awesome stuff. And James, I want to give you a chance to weigh in, pun intended, on this as well. With Costa, with Costa's weight. What are your takeaways from this? Like, should this fight even be happening? Is this setting a bad precedent?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not a precedent because your boy set the precedent. Nick Diaz, in my opinion, and as Jonathan mentioned, there may be differences in the situation, but I think if Nick didn't get away with it last month, it's already happening. I thought it would actually take a little longer. I knew this was setting a bad trend, but I thought, okay, maybe in 6 months another guy will try it. Maybe Conor McGregor will try it, or someone else with a big name. Now you have a guy like Paulo Costa who's probably on the skids a little bit, in terms of if he has another couple bad fights, and with this incident, he could be off the UFC roster in the Bellator. So I think the bad precedent that Nick Diaz set is going to really trick some guys, because not everyone has the same leverage as Nick Diaz has. Paulo Costa does this. He loses a fight or two. He's out of there. Like, they're not going to treat the Diaz brothers like that. But they will treat Paulo Costa and just about anybody else not named Conor McGregor or Diaz, this way. So I just think it's bad for the sport. It's unprofessional, and the thing that gets me, I think, the most about it is I would assume Costa knew this 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, that, hey, he's not really cutting weight. He's not watching his diet, whatever. He has some things going on. Let the other fighter know, and then they can kind of have they could set it up a month ago and say, hey, let's have a catch weight bout a month ago. Don't show up the fight week and then put it on Vettori all of a sudden and make him look like the bad guy if he doesn't accept it, to where it's almost like the drama is being put in his on his side. It's no drama on Vettori's side. Vettori was being a professional. He was dieting, cutting weight, training, came in at the weight that he should, and was ready to fight. Costa did not, but then he kind of put the ball in Vettori's corner. It just the whole thing it doesn't sit well with me. I don't like it, and I hope that this is the last of it happening. But I have a feeling that next month, 2 months from now, you're going to see another fighter try it, and then later on, you're going to see another fighter try it. I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't the last time.
Now, before I let Frank give his take, I want to tell one of my favorite Frank stories. So, years ago, Frank and I were about to call a fight together at a Fight Time Promotions event, and we're both at the weigh-in the day before. And like, if you think a lot of UFC fighters miss weight, unfortunately, when you're at regional promotions and these people, these fighters don't have the money and the coaching and the experience that UFC fighters have in cutting weight. So it can be a shit show sometimes. Like, there are certain fighters, even on the regional scene, that are very professional, will make weight every time. And then there's a lot who won't, a lot who will just be way off. Okay. And so one of the best things ever, and I've seen this happen many times. Like, it was pretty common, like at least 1 or 2 fights per event, you would have somebody who didn't make weight. And then, usually they would still agree to fight and the show would go on. Okay. And so I'm at this weigh-in with Frank. And okay, so this one fighter,
we were calling the fight too.
We were calling the fight, yeah. And I think these were even 2 heavyweights. So the guy who missed weight couldn't get down to 265, right? So the first fighter, he made weight, and he was a big dude. Like, he probably even had to cut to make it to 265, which is why he was extra pissed when his opponent did not make the weight, and he was clearly steamed and upset by it. And then Frank Zaffere, and I think this was completely unsolicited, Frank swoops in and he starts giving this dude advice. And you could tell the rest of the story, Frank, but you talked this dude out of going through with the fight when his opponent missed weight. Like, you convinced this guy, don't fight him, and he didn't.
Wow.
James, not just that one. I successfully dumped 3 fights off that card. Look, Alex and I were calling it, and there must have been 400 fights scheduled. I'm like, I'm not going to get done this till 5 in the morning.
There were probably like 12 or 13. There were like 12 or 13 fights scheduled. Yeah.
So these guys are missing weight, and what I would do is, they don't know me, so I would just kind of come up behind them a little bit, kind of in the circle but not in the circle, and I would just start mumbling. You did all the work. Don't give him the benefit. You put the work in. Don't honor this guy by letting him fight. And then I'd see him like, yeah, he's right. But they don't know who's exactly saying it. They're like, yeah. And then it's like, F that. I'm not fighting. I'm like, great.
Oh, wow.
And I just kept moving around. And I successfully manipulated us out of calling 3 or 4 fights that night. But Yeah, I mean, look, I feel very passionately about this. Actually, I mean, that joke, that funny story aside, I mean, especially when you're a professional athlete for the UFC, make weight or change weight classes. Alex M texted earlier that they should change the percentage of the purse loss.
Mm.
Something has to. I agree. Something has to happen that makes it so punitive that if your opponent feels obligated to take the fight or needs the money or whatever, which is often the case, that there's just such a damaging blow to your own purse for being unprofessional and unprepared that that it discourages this kind of behavior. Because
Yeah.
there's no way. I agree. I don't know which one of you said it. Paulo Costa, he knew weeks ago that he wasn't going to make weight.
Yeah, I think it was Jonathan who said it. Yeah.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and consider this. I mean, Vettori is ranked what, 1 or 2 in the division? What's his current ranking in the division right now?
I want to say 2.
He's in the top. Yeah, he's in the top 2. He has a lot to lose in this. I mean, he's going to fight a heavier guy now that didn't cut weight, who's probably may come in with an advantage in terms of energy and weight and things like that. If he loses this fight, the UFC is not going to cut him any slack and say, okay, well, you lost to a heavier guy, and we'll keep you in your top 1 or 2 ranking, and you're still 1 fight away from Israel Adesanya. No, the UFC is going to drop him down to 5, and then he's going to have to win 2 or 3 more fights to get back to Izzy.
Oh, actually, you know what? Vettori is actually down at 5. It's Costa who's number 2.
Oh, Costa's number 2. Okay, then that kind of changes it. Maybe that kind of weighed into it that he can beat Costa and get right back in there. I thought Vettori would be ranked higher. I mean, he lost to the champ. I mean, how did he drop all the way to 5? But
so Costa, head up to 205, buddy. I mean, I guess Dana White will have that conversation with him. But I think the odds are Costa's out of the league soon. I mean, I think he's a little bit of a head case.
Yeah,
and I think he's going to lose badly to Vettori. And then you've got a guy who, can't make weight, doesn't really have any game left. Something's wrong with him. So off he goes.
I feel pretty confident about Vettori winning the fight. I know that Costa's going to try to make it a little bit of a brawl, and he's got a lot of power. But as Alex M pointed out in the chat, he's right. Vettori has never been knocked out before, and I think Vettori is going to be able to take him down and do some work and just control the fight. And I think that once Costa faces some adversity, I think he's going to crumble a little bit. So I think I'm pretty confident in Vettori winning it. So I agree to go with the slight underdog. Frank, I think you already said you're favoring Vettori, right?
Yeah, I am. Do you think Costa has a little bit of the Ronda Rousey issue? Because that fight with Yoel Romero, as an example, I saw a lot of stamina and heart, and I mean, it was a brawl, but I mean, he looked like he was somebody that we were going to be paying attention to for a while in that division. And then suddenly, I don't feel that way at all about him.
No, I don't either.
I just wonder if he has that, he lost badly to Adesanya, and then maybe that's it. I mean, it's just like, I'm not invincible anymore, and I just don't know what to do. I can't handle the loss.
And my thing is, like, I agree with this, and it always goes back to what Joe Rogan used to say about the fighters who were super muscular, like the Hector Lombard types, that it's hard to get oxygen into those muscles, bro. He gasses out. So I definitely see Vettori as the guy with the game plan and the cardio to go deeper in this fight. What do you think, James? Do you see Costa or Vettori?
Yeah, I like Vettori. I mean, it's a close matchup if everybody came in at their peak. It's a really good matchup, and actually a fight I was looking forward to until all this came about. But I mean, I think Vettori is going to win it. I mean, he's kind of coming in with the right mindset, more discipline, and I don't think Vettori would have taken the fight if he had a little bit of doubt, even a little bit of doubt in his mind. So I think he's super confident that, hey, no matter what weight Costa comes in, I have a good game plan. I had a good training camp. I'm ready to go.
All right, guys, before we wrap up this episode, let's give some kudos and complaints. My kudos, I'm going to bring up a story we hadn't talked about at all yet. My kudos goes to Colby Covington for elite trolling. So in a recent interview, Colby Covington claimed that the reason why Kamaru Usman had to finally agree to fight him again is that the UFC threatened to strip Usman of the belt if he didn't fight Covington. And it's the type of thing I hear. I'm sure he's lying. It's like the stuff that Chael Sonnen used to say about, like I interviewed Chael back in the day, and I was asking him, like, why do people hate you so much in Brazil? He's like, oh no, they love me. I've got a timeshare in Brazil. I'm there all the time. I knew the guy was talking shit. It was funny. Like I'm sure Colby Covington was lying about the UFC threatening to strip the champ if he didn't fight him again. But he definitely got under his skin with that comment, because Kamaru Usman is like out there telling everybody he's lying. They didn't threaten to strip me. And why would they? I mean, Usman has already fought twice this year. It's not like he's been an inactive champion. And this is, to me, when you're talking about not only promoting the fight, but getting under your opponent's skin, which is something Colby likes to do. That is elite level trolling when you say a lie like that some people might actually believe. But my kudos goes to Colby Covington for keeping his troll game on point heading into this fight. What about you, James?
My kudos actually goes to Michael Chandler. He had a great interview this week. As far as he knows, he's going into a firefight, coming up at MSG, but he spoke extremely high of his opponent. They both balanced their compliments, but also trash talking, just how you want it in MMA, to where they're respectful of their opponent, but they're also trash talking kind of at the same time. That they're, you can tell there's some animosity. They don't really like each other all that much, Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler, but they're so similar in the way they fight. They're so similar in their backgrounds. Both wrestlers, both college All-Americans, both won championships in smaller organizations, both trying to win a championship in the UFC. They both taken such similar paths that they can do nothing but respect each other, and they're kind of meeting right at the top, no pun intended, because that's kind of Michael Chandler saying, see you at the top. But they're kind of meeting right at the top of that mountain at MSG. Winner probably gets a title shot. And I just like the banter that they've had, to where it's been respectful, but trash talk at the same time. I really think they're kind of showing the way of how to hype up a fight without it being tasteless.
I have two kudos, because you brought up Michael Chandler, and I didn't want to double dip on Chandler. And this is not a statement for or against vaccination. But I like it in this culture, this cancel culture we're in, when somebody like that will stand up and take a stand for whatever they believe in. And Michael Chandler has dug in on his right to decide that he doesn't want to get the vaccine. And I thought that was pretty impressive given the current culture and climate in this country. I respect his resolve. But my bigger kudos goes to the UFC calendar, because we're going to get Chandler, Gaethje, and we're going to get Covington and Usman. And I'm really, really excited to move into some really exciting main event fights.
By the way, my complaint, maybe it's just that we have the same first name and he's reading my mind somehow, but Alex M hit mine on the head. These last couple of fight nights don't do us like boxing does its fans. Yeah, it's like I've had really, and I think the one this weekend is going to be better. And I like the Bellator show this weekend as well, because I'm a Fedor fanboy. But yeah, these last couple of UFC fight night cards, I mentioned earlier, like I just finally woke up like 4 days later after that Aspen Ladd fight. Like, these last couple of fight night cards have been bad. I know that they have these TV agreements with ESPN where they basically put on shows like 48 weeks a year. Like, they don't take a whole lot of time off. And it's like, it can be good and bad, because sometimes fight cards that don't look good can actually really sneak up on you and surprise you. And for the most part, I watch all of them. But then it's still like, you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Like, if you have enough fight cards that just look really bad on paper, there's a decent chance you're going to get a snore fest. And we've had some bad ones these last couple of weeks. So, I'd love it if they would just do less shows and higher quality shows. But based on the way that this ESPN deal has gone now for 2 years, that does not seem to be the game plan. The game plan seems to be almost every weekend a year we're doing something. And I complain about that.
Yeah, my complaint, and now I'll be short because we kind of talked about this ad nauseum a little bit, is the UFC and the way they handle this whole Costa thing and the Nick Diaz thing. The UFC deserves some culpability in this. They're letting this go. They're kind of putting the onus on the opponent, whether it's Robbie Lawler or Marvin Vettori, to accept it. I think the UFC needs to do more, like we mentioned earlier, maybe taking more of the fighter's purse, 50% or something, or just not letting the bouts happen. But they've kind of opened Pandora's box here that, look, if you don't want to be professional and you want to come in and if you have a big enough name, if you're in the main event or if you're a Diaz brother or something like that, you can get away with it and without all that, without much repercussions. Now, you might lose the fight like Nick Diaz did because he didn't come in good shape, or Costa might lose, because he wasn't training enough. But I just think the UFC needs to do something about it. Just don't just let this go. With just a little slap on the wrist. So that's my complaint. I know we talked about that a lot.
Damn, James, you and I are like on the same wavelength. I was going to go that way, so I'll go the other way. We missed last week, but I wanted to talk about the domestic violence issues that seem to be popping up a lot recently with UFC fighters. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Luis Pena that was our latest criminal act in that theater, and he was summarily dismissed from the UFC, which basically contradicts everything I said about how the UFC is probably just letting local like police do their job, and then the UFC will determine how their course of action pending the investigation and everything. And now, no, it's just very clear that the UFC has decided to say that John Jones, it's okay if you hit your girlfriend or wife, but Luis, it's not okay if you do. And I just can't jive that in my mind. It makes no sense. It's a horrible look, and it's not how you grow a sport. It's not how you maintain an ESPN partnership. It's not how you continue to expand into a casual sports market with the kind of marketing and media partners that they're going to want to earn. I mean, it's just not how you do it. It's a horrible look, and I don't know how he could possibly explain it.
Oh, great stuff by all. I want to send a huge shout out to everybody who took time, whether you're watching us live or you watch this later on, taking time out of your day or your night to watch this. We appreciate it. Make sure you hit that like button, you smash that thumbs up button, and subscribe to 5 Reasons Sports on YouTube. Huge thanks to Jonathan Ramlakan for jumping in as well. And yeah, let people know we do this every Thursday. We missed last week just because of the craziness going on in my family, but this is a regular Thursday occurrence for us. And make sure you follow James on Twitter at James Walker NFL. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Alex Donno. And even though he chooses not to advertise it, follow Frank at RealFrank_Z.
Alex, quickly, I got to tell you this. My Twitter, it couldn't be worse now. For some reason, my new iPhone, I got the new iPhone 13. It just logged me out of Twitter. I don't even have my password. I can't even get in there.
You can't even get on? Oh, no. That does happen when you get like a new device. There's all these shenanigans. And then, like, if God forbid you forgot your password or something, good luck. Good luck with that.
Gone. Yeah.
Oh, my God. So it was a fun dream while it lasted. The RealFrank_Z Twitter. Everyone enjoy all the fights this weekend. Go Fedor. We will talk to you guys again next week, Thursday night, on another episode of 5 Rounds on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.